just driving back from a job, and I remember seeing several videos of electric cars and just looking around the countryside, thinking, what is the issue with electric cars? Why did this come up? Well, because I dropped someone off just by an old dam, and it reminded me of a video I saw just the other day of what was known as the Great Kettle Surge, the Great British Kettle Surge. That is when, at half time or during commercial breaks of football games or big events like that, every household in Britain would switch on their kettle. That will require a power boost to the national grid to avoid a massive drain on its power. So someone once thought, why not just time it just right and just let loose the hydroelectric dams? That way there's a spike in energy input, so the spike in energy consumption is balanced out. It's tricky and it's well done, so the national grid remains active. Ultimately, that naturally got my mind onto what about electric cars? Will they cause us drain on the grid? And those are more my concerns, because realistically, that is the problem. We just don't have the infrastructure. The national grid needs a good amount of power going to it in order to have the required energy output for electric cars, for any sort of electric vehicle. I mean, we've increasingly drained the grid through various means throughout the years. So we need to figure out a way of adding to it before we start adding outlets. Now, I know many people, when talking about electric cars, will talk about the range, but for that you just need to rethink your entire method of driving. Many people talk about how long it takes them to charge. Again, just to rethink how you charge them. Treat it like your mobile phone, and basically, you're fine. Charge them up overnight. You're all good. Plug them in when you get home. When you're not using them, plug them in. It's those mindset changes people need to have. However, one thing is somewhat exaggerated in my opinion, and also something which is expanded upon constantly, and is something that links back to religion. That is the battery fires. You can have an electric car catch fire and it's near impossible to put out, so they generally let it burn. I need to look up the statistics for this, but I'm pretty sure that there have been more petrol fires throughout the history of cars than there have been electrical fires throughout the same period. We need to look at the statistics. Even if we narrow it down to, say, a particularly bad year for electric fires and a particularly good year for petrol fires, those sorts of things. Petrol is naturally more flammable than lithium. So why do people get in a tizzy about it? Well, the problem is social media. The problem is people will publicise the stories about electrical car fires more than they will about petrol car fires. That's just the way it goes. Strangely enough, there's an example of this in history, where one well-publicised event caused the entire industry to collapse. And I'm not talking about nuclear disasters either, because often those are misrepresented. I'm talking about Hindenburg, the Zeppelins. I don't know how many Zeppelins caught fire during the time they were well known, during the time they were actually used. But certainly Hindenburg was the most well-known disaster when it came to airships. Lighted and air airships. They are a thing of the past. Whilst they are trying to revive them in various other ways, they're not going to reach the same commercial success for a good long while. Because Hindenburg was not only seen on camera, but shared across the world. It was the most publicised event which grounded all the airships. It helped that heavier than air flying machines were already taking off. But Hindenburg pretty much brought all the airships down, as no one had confidence in them anymore. It's because of its publicity that made it such an alarming thing and made it so strong in the public eye. And that is the thing. The moment things hit social media and get blown out of proportion, that is when things get stuck. We should be aware of this. But so many people think that because it's in the media and because it's being shared so widely, it must be a big thing. They will make it a big thing. That's the way it goes. But when it's no longer a big thing, when it's no longer something interesting, people just lose interest. This was something that Top Gear discovered when they went on their first ever special road trip. That was from somewhere in Florida to New Orleans. I don't remember exactly where. They drove across America. And when they got to New Orleans, their plan was to just sell their cars. However, they got to the area where Hurricane Katrina had blasted through. Now, I remember growing up in that time, so I heard a lot about Hurricane Katrina and its disasters. But the moment it dropped off the media, you just sort of think, nah, it's all gone now, nothing. When in actual fact the disaster itself lingered on. That is the problem. The big shock and awe is what the media likes to publicise. The moment it becomes boring and mundane, it's gone. COVID is still a thing. It's still hovering in some areas, maybe rampant in some. But it's no longer a big story. They've lost interest. The war in Ukraine is also a big thing, a major thing. But you don't hear about that on the news much these days. You hear about peace talks, but you don't hear about the actual war. Not much. And And therein lies the problem. The big interest. The big spike. The second you realise the big spike is all it is, you need to look at how it builds. You need to look at the wave and see how it's still going. And also focus on how broad the effect is, not just on the single point. Why do I mention this? Many anti-theists will point out that when the Pope, Lord rest his soul, was allowing same-sex marriage to be blessed by the Catholic Church, many people left the church. Other people were asking, well, why didn't they leave when the Pope was defending all the abuse that was going on in the church? Here's the thing. How do they know? How were they looking? Where were they looking? Is the question. If you don't have something to point at, it's not really a story. So people won't share it. And that is the thing that people forget. If they're going to be journalists of their own kind, they need to understand that the big stories will still be there. Everyone's going to cover it. But that's why YouTube is unfortunately going down the way it is, going down the realm of big trending stuff rather than supporting small channels who do niche things. I wouldn't be at all surprised if my stuff's not being pushed. But at the end of the day, trending is only going to keep you relevant for a short time. You have to keep on it. I respond to things in my own time, so I may be behind the curve most of the time. But realistically, I'd rather focus on what needs to be said rather than on what's being said. I'll respond to things when I can, and you may notice that many of my upcoming shorts are going to be on things that have already been said years ago. That's because of the backlog I have, and because I've been stuck doing other things for the past couple of months. 2 months away from the channel has been tricky to keep viewers up and tricky to keep videos flowing, but when you've got to look after family, you don't really have a choice. That's just the way it goes. So just because of the big thing spiking in the news and people are reacting to it in real time, that does not mean it's as bad as people are saying. You have to look into it, do your research, be discerning, as we are called to be. The passage that I use constantly to reinforce what we do on this channel. I'll make sure I put the reference for it on here, somewhere in Proverbs, but it's: the fool believes all that he hears, but the discerning person considers well his steps. So don't jump on things just because they're big news. Consider their origin and what they mean for us in the long term, in a broader sense. Not just focusing